Social media fame can make recklessness look like confidence, an illusion that danger disappears when the camera's rolling. But for some creators, the chase for attention crossed the line between bold and fatal. Here are 6 influencer deaths where the pursuit of views turned deadly. It was October 14th, 2017. Along the fog-swept Oregon coast, the tide was low, exposing dark, slick rock. A small tripod and a phone balanced on driftwood faced the gray ocean, where one man's attempt to impress a handful of online followers was about to turn catastrophic. Evan Price was 27, a part-time barista and self-taught forager from Eugene. He ran a small Instagram page, a side project he hoped might attract sponsors from outdoor brands or cooking channels. He followed wilderness influencers religiously, but rarely verified their claims, often quoting Reddit threads when identifying edible plants. He owned basic camping gear and a GoPro knockoff, and spent weekends filming short, unscripted clips of his supposed expertise. His posts drew mild engagement, but Evan craved a breakthrough, something risky enough to go viral. The Pacific Northwest's damp coastlines are known for their abundance of wild mushrooms. Many edible varieties look nearly identical to toxic species, a fact emphasized repeatedly by state park signs and local foraging guides. Evan ignored these warnings. Online, he had recently watched a viral clip of a European vlogger eating wild death caps that turned out harmless due to misidentification. His recklessness wasn't malicious, just stupid. That afternoon, Evan and his friend Amir hiked a short distance from the trail near Cape Lookout. It was foggy, visibility under 50 yards, and the air smelled of salt and decaying wood. They stopped near a driftwood shelf where Evan arranged mushrooms he'd picked earlier from a shaded slope. He told Amir to set up the camera while he sorted the pile, naming them with dumb confidence: chanterelles, oyster caps, angel wings. The pile also included one nearly pure white specimen, its stem thick, cap smooth, a lethal Amanita species. Evan brushed off Amir's hesitation, saying he'd cross-checked the shape on Google. They filmed just before noon. Evan spoke into the camera, joking that it was his Oregonian taste test. He sliced pieces with a pocket knife and chewed while describing flavors. For the rest of the afternoon and evening, he felt fine. No discomfort, no nausea. He even uploaded a short clip teasing a forager's dinner post for later. About 10 hours after eating, symptoms began abruptly: violent vomiting, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. Amir initially thought it was food poisoning from something else they'd eaten and helped him rehydrate with bottled water. The next day, Evan's symptoms eased and he joked weakly that he must have a strong stomach. But internally, the amatoxin from the Amanita phalloides was already destroying his liver cells. By the third day, his skin turned yellow and he began slurring words, showing signs of hepatic encephalopathy. Amir called emergency services again, when Evan became disoriented and started vomiting blood. Paramedics reached them by afternoon and rushed him to a hospital in Tillamook. Doctors identified acute liver failure consistent with Amanita poisoning and transferred him to Portland for specialized care. Despite aggressive therapy, his liver and kidneys failed over the next several days. He was pronounced dead on the 7th day after ingestion. Toxicology confirmed ingestion of Amanita phalloides, a mushroom responsible for most fatal poisonings in the Pacific Northwest. Embarrassed, Evan's family requested the removal of his online accounts. In Eugene, a quiet memorial was held by his co-workers. Amir was questioned but not charged, though he withdrew from public view. It was March 19, 2016, on the outskirts of Teesside, England. The decommissioned power station loomed over the river flats, its rusted gates and faded hazard signs half hidden in fog. For years, it had been a curiosity for thrill seekers, a hollow monument of concrete and steel. That night, 2 young men crept past the perimeter fence with tripods and headlamps. Jamie Carter was 24, a warehouse worker by day and self-styled urban explorer online. His small YouTube channel had about 4,000 followers, just enough to feed his ego, not enough to sustain it. He had a reputation in forums for taking unnecessary risks to get the angle, climbing catwalks and squeezing through ducts most explorers avoided. His clips were flashy but shallow, often showing him laughing while others warned of asbestos or unstable floors. His ignorant mind believed caution made videos boring. The Teesside site had been offline since 1999, its cooling towers notorious among explorers. Each was over 300 feet tall, its interior bowl lined with slick concrete and open scaffolding left from the dismantling phase. The acoustics inside made a single shout echo for seconds, ideal for dramatic footage. Officially, entry was banned, and structural engineers had marked the interior supports unsafe due to years of corrosion and water seepage. None of that mattered to Jamie's thick skull. He'd watched drone footage earlier that week and told a friend it would be an easy-in, quick shoot. His friend, Liam, reluctantly agreed to film from above. They arrived near midnight. The fog had thickened, muffling distant traffic and making the towers seem endless. They carried a basic camera rig, a small LED bar, and a cheap helmet cam taped to Jamie's head. Using a bolt cutter, they widened a gap in the fence and slipped inside. The ground was slick with algae and soot. After setting up the main light near the rim, Jamie began descending the narrow maintenance staircase bolted to the inner wall of the tower's shell. Liam stayed near the top, adjusting the main camera and occasionally calling down for check-ins. Footage recovered later shows Jamie reaching the halfway gallery, a rusted catwalk with pools of stagnant water. He panned his camera upward, shouting to test the echo, grinning at the result. He then walked toward a scaffold platform suspended over the central drop. It looked stable enough in the dim light, but corrosion had eaten through the cross braces. Liam's camera caught him stepping onto it, one hand on the rail before the metal gave way. The footage jerks violently as Jamie's helmet cam flips end over end, capturing a blur of gray concrete before impact. Liam's audio records a single short yell, then a sharp metallic crash that echoed for seconds. Disoriented, he shouted for Jamie, his voice thin against the hollow chamber. He climbed down several steps before realizing the danger. The air inside was heavy with dust and echoing drips. When emergency crews finally arrived, guided by his call, specialist fire and rescue teams took nearly 2 hours to reach the base before paramedics confirmed death from multiple blunt force injuries. Investigators matched helmet camera timestamps with the plant's perimeter CCTV, confirming their unlawful entry at 23:48. In the aftermath, local authorities sealed the site with reinforced fencing and motion-activated cameras. Liam was charged with aggravated trespass and fined under safety breach provisions. Within the urban exploration community, forums lit up with debates about safety, with Jamie's final video circulated briefly before moderators removed it. It was July 7, 2018, at a wellness complex in central Stockholm. A humid heat hung over the facility as visitors filtered in for the Saturday evening session, unwinding after work. Among them was a young woman setting up a phone outside the largest steam sauna, a small gesture that would soon spiral into something irreversible. Linnea Carlson, 21, was a wellness vlogger with a small but loyal following. Her channel focused on contrast therapy, plunging into ice baths, sprinting from snow to sauna, or holding her breath underwater, always chasing proof that she could master discomfort. Her personality mixed discipline and impulsivity. Friends described her as obsessed with looking calm no matter how extreme the stunt. Lately, she'd been quietly frustrated. Bigger creators were landing spa brand deals and supplement sponsors, while she stayed stuck at a few thousand views. The endurance challenge she planned wasn't about health anymore. It was about finally proving she belonged, even if the idea was dangerously stupid. Technically, steam rooms depend on a careful balance of heat and humidity. The old steam unit in the public spa Linnea visited that night was designed to maintain around 122 degrees Fahrenheit, but its thermostat had begun malfunctioning, producing bursts of much higher heat under full humidity. In that environment, with no evaporation to cool the body, overheating can occur within minutes. Maintenance logs later confirmed repeated surges in recent weeks. Staff generally discouraged long solo sessions, but Linnea's calm, confident manner made the attendant assume she knew what she was doing. She said she would only be inside briefly to record a short segment for her channel. At 8:37 p.m., she entered the steam room wrapped in a towel, propped the door open for a moment to adjust her phone on the bench, then sealed it shut. Inside, her phone recorded smooth breathing for the first 5 minutes, then increasingly shallow gasps. Condensation blurred the lens. By minute 8, her posture shifted. She leaned forward, one arm braced on the bench. The internal temperature had spiked past 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Through the glass, a nearby guest saw her mouth something indistinct, but assumed she was acting for the video. CCTV footage showed small details: condensation pouring down the door, Linnea moving slower, head dipping lower. Around minute 11, a sharp movement. She tried to stand and stumbled. Steam thickened. At minute 12, a nurse using the adjacent relaxation room noticed the thud and opened the door. Witness statements describe a wave of heat escaping so strong it fogged the corridor mirror. Linnea was slumped against the bench, skin mottled, pulse faint. The nurse and staff pulled her out, began CPR, and instructed others to call 112, Sweden's emergency number, while pouring cool water over her body. Paramedics arrived within minutes and continued resuscitation during transport. Her core temperature was later measured at 108.1 degrees Fahrenheit, consistent with advanced hyperthermia and multi-organ stress. Despite aggressive cooling and intravenous fluids, she went into cardiac arrest at the hospital and was declared dead at 10:12 p.m. Medical reports cited heat stroke complicated by dehydration and delayed extraction. Authorities temporarily closed the spa, ordering immediate inspection of all steam control units. Management revised policy to require staff to check rooms every 10 minutes when occupied. In the aftermath, news of her death spread through Swedish media for a few days. Online, the reaction was mixed. Some mourned her dedication, others mocked her decision to film an endurance stunt alone. Wellness forums turned the incident into a cautionary example, dissecting her mistakes with clinical detachment. It was March 28, 2015, in the crowded Dadar market of Mumbai. Midday heat shimmered off tin awnings, and the narrow lanes buzzed with honking rickshaws, hawkers' calls, and the constant shuffle of shoppers. At one corner, a parked white van waited with its engine idling, unremarkable amid the chaos. No one there knew that within minutes, a prank meant for online views would ignite panic and end a young man's life. Arav Singh, 22, had built a small but fast-growing Facebook prank channel that thrived on shock reactions and public social experiment clips. He wasn't malicious, just eager and clueless about how far was too far. His videos featured fake fainting, wallet theft tests, and mock robberies, all played off as harmless fun. That month, a local content agency had noticed his page and hinted at future sponsorship. Arav took it as motivation to push harder, not realizing how dangerously stupid his next idea really was. He and two friends designed a public abduction scenario. The plan was to fake a kidnapping in a busy area, film reactions, and later reveal the truth. They chose Dadar Market for its density and energy, placing hidden cameras in stalls with the casual consent of a few vendors who believed it was a social awareness video. Their victim, 20-year-old Rohit Mehra, an amateur actor, agreed to play the abductee for exposure. The idea seemed simple. Two men in masks would grab Rohit, shove him into the van, and drive off. Arav coordinated from a distance, holding the main camera. None of them sought filming permits or considered how naive this idea was. That morning, market conditions made the stunt riskier. It was a Saturday. Peak traffic, shoulder-to-shoulder crowds, and short tempers under rising heat. The van had trouble parking discreetly. Several vendors complained it blocked the lane. Arav brushed it off, focused on positioning his camera for a wide shot. Arav insisted they only needed one good take. At 12:42 p.m., they began. Rohit walked the lane pretending to speak on the phone. Suddenly, two masked men lunged from behind a stall and grabbed him. He screamed as rehearsed, thrashing while being dragged toward the van. A woman nearby screamed back. Within seconds, the crowd surged. Someone shouted that traffickers were taking a boy. Plastic crates toppled. Vendors ran toward the scuffle. CCTV from a spice shop later showed a man swinging a metal rod at one of the actors. The staged struggle collapsed into chaos. Rohit fell backward, his head striking the curb as people stampeded. Arav dropped his camera and pushed through the crowd, shouting for them to stop, but his voice vanished in the noise. In the aftermath, screams turned to silence. Rohit lay motionless, his chest compressed from trampling, blood on the pavement blending with spilled fruit pulp. Police from the local Dadar station arrived within minutes, detaining Arav and the two masked friends as the furious crowd closed in. Officers recovered their cameras, confirming the setup from the recorded footage. Rohit, the young actor hired for the stunt, was rushed to Sion Hospital but was pronounced dead from internal injuries. Authorities charged Arav and his group for causing death by negligence and for public endangerment. The Market Association imposed a permanent filming ban without official clearance. Facebook removed Arav's page within days. It was November 6, 2016, a Sunday afternoon in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Crowds filled the narrow cobblestone lanes of San Telmo, where old carriages rolled past antique stalls and buskers played guitars in the sun. Among them, a young content creator was preparing what he called a vintage moment. It was supposed to be quick, a playful, stylish stunt for social media. Mateo Alvarez, 28, had built a modest following online by mixing old-world fashion with modern flair, waistcoats, suspenders, slicked hair, and carefully staged videos that turned ordinary street scenes into short visual dramas. He wasn't rich or famous, but he wanted to stand out in a city filled with performers. He courted risk when it made a scene memorable, climbing trams, dancing near moving vehicles, skating through intersections. His friends described him as relentless and impatient, convinced that one perfect clip could launch him into relevance. San Telmo was his chosen stage, crowded, nostalgic, and full of old carriages that ferried tourists on weekends. The carriages moved slowly, led by horses familiar with city noise, their drivers used to weaving through pedestrians. Mateo knew the rhythm of the market well, and often choreographed clips with real movement as background. That Saturday, he decided to top previous videos by vaulting onto a passing horse carriage mid-motion. Just like an old movie, he'd told friends earlier. He chose a polished tourist carriage pulled by two dark bay horses, judging the pace slow enough to catch. The plan was as simple as it was stupid. Around 3 p.m., Mateo asked a friend to film from a cafe bench using a phone on livestream. Another friend would cue him when the carriage turned the corner. The ground was uneven from earlier rain, but he foolishly brushed off concern. The driver, unaware of the stunt, guided his team through the lane as usual. Bystanders later said the horse was moving faster than it appeared. Mateo jogged ahead to align his run, waited for the frame, then sprinted. He lunged beside the carriage and reached for the metal step. The live stream caught the moment. A smile, a half jump, then a flash of motion as his right foot lost traction on the slick cobblestone. He caught the step with one hand, swung sideways and slammed into the wheel housing. The camera jolted. A gasp was heard from the crowd. The wheel clipped his hip, spinning him backward beneath the carriage's path. The horse startled at the impact, rearing slightly before bolting forward. The carriage jolted, one wheel riding over Mateo's pelvis as bystanders screamed. Tourists scattered while vendors dropped goods to rush in. The driver struggled to pull the reins, the horses sliding briefly on the wet stones. Two men dragged Mateo clear as others tried to calm the animals. Blood spread across the cobbles. Witnesses described him conscious but barely moving. A street vendor tore a belt to use as a tourniquet, while others called for emergency. Paramedics reached the scene within minutes and began resuscitation, noting severe crush trauma to the pelvis and abdomen. He was transported to Hospital Argerich, where trauma surgeons attempted emergency stabilization. Despite rapid transfusions and decompressive surgery, Matteo went into cardiac arrest within an hour of arrival. He was pronounced dead less than an hour later from internal bleeding and organ rupture. An investigation determined the carriage was operating within normal limits and that the driver had no warning of the stunt. Authorities cited reckless interference with a moving vehicle as the primary factor. City authorities later introduced restrictions on filming near horse-drawn carriages and required drivers to keep a wider clearance from pedestrians and tourist corridors. Matteo's final clip, only 12 seconds long, circulated widely online before being taken down. His mother later started a small safety campaign aimed at young performers, emphasizing discipline over spectacle, a quiet memorial to a son undone by his own showmanship. It was July 19, 2015 in São Paulo, Brazil. In the industrial district near Moca, a group of friends climbed a building for what was meant to be a creative stunt, a glowing portrait against the electric skyline. It was supposed to look daring. It would instead become a fatal demonstration of how close fascination can drift toward stupidity. Rafaela Souza, 23, was known among local photographers for her gritty urban compositions, concrete, rust, and wires. She worked part-time at a camera shop and spent her nights climbing rooftops for long exposure shots of city lights. Her small following praised photos that looked risky, and she chased that approval without thinking much past the shot. However, a few of her friends said that it wasn't bravery, just dumb confidence disguised as art. São Paulo's old commercial roofs were uneven mosaics of vents, antennas, and cables. Near rooftop transformers, the air sometimes buzzed faintly from corona discharge, a static hum cutting through the humid air. Rafaela knew exactly where to go for the best backdrops. She liked shooting near the transformers, saying the hum made her photos feel electric. Her friends told her it was stupid to stand that close, but she laughed it off. The kind of careless confidence that comes from not really believing anything bad could happen. That evening, she led two friends up the service stairs of an old concrete building overlooking a narrow street. The rooftop was flat, littered with debris and metal ducts. To one side stood a small transformer unit, connected by thick cables to the building's electrical system. They arrived just before sunset, setting up a tripod near a rusted vent. She positioned a mannequin head near the transformer's housing, hoping the reflections from nearby signage and streetlights would create a faint halo effect. The air felt heavy. Occasional crackles came from the wires. The plan was to time a long exposure shot with Rafaela standing near the transformer, while city lights shimmered below. Her friends hesitated. The setup was tighter than expected. Rafaela brushed it off, saying they'd only need a few seconds. The phone camera was placed on timer mode, and the group stood ready. As she leaned forward to adjust the mannequin's tilt, the humidity thickened, and a low electrical hiss filled the air. A neighboring building's security camera recorded what happened next. A sudden flash lit the roof, a bright blue-white arc that jumped from the transformer's loose clamp to a nearby metal vent. The discharge spread laterally, seeking ground through the wet surface. Rafaela's right hand brushed the vent at that instant. Her friends later described her body stiffening, then collapsing backward as smoke trailed from her sleeve. Her friends screamed and tried to reach her, but were forced back by the residual current and the acrid smell of ozone. Down on the street, people saw the flash and heard the thud of something hitting the roof. A delivery worker called emergency services while others ran inside to help. When paramedics arrived, Rafaela was unresponsive, her clothing charred at one arm and shoulder. They initiated CPR while cooling the burns with saline packs. She regained a faint pulse briefly, but went into cardiac arrest en route to the hospital. She was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Medical reports cited cardiac failure and deep electrical burns consistent with a high-voltage shock. Utility inspectors later found a corroded grounding clamp on the transformer and traces of arcing between the vent and rooftop conduit. The building owner had never filed maintenance reports. Authorities concluded the discharge was spontaneous but fatal, only because of Rafaela's proximity. Friends removed her photo draft from social media and organized a small memorial. The utility company quietly replaced faulty rooftop equipment citywide, and funded a neighborhood safety workshop. A small gesture that turned one photographer's fatal mistake into a warning no image was worth repeating. Thanks for watching. Liked what you saw? Click here for more.